Hello, and welcome to the BYU Family History Library webinar series. I'm Marin, and I'll be your host for this webinar. Please make sure that your microphones and web cameras are disabled during the presentation to provide a smooth webinar. Our upcoming webinars are on Wednesday the 17th and Thursday the 18th. We'll be hearing from Joe Price, who will be giving a presentation on family name networks, and then we'll be having not a follow-up presentation, but another presentation that week on Thursday with James Tanner. If you'd like to access a previous webinar, please visit our website or our YouTube channel where you can look at our webinar index. All of our webinars are recorded and uploaded the following Monday for your convenience. We also post links to those recordings and other updates on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. During the webinar, if you have any technical difficulties, you can use the chat box and I'll address those concerns. If there's any trouble with the audio, if you can't hear me or if things aren't clear, please just type that in the chat box and I can address that. You're welcome to use the chat box as well for comments and insights. However, all questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. For today's webinar, we are pleased to hear from Kathryn Grant, who will be giving a presentation on FamilySearch Family Tree views. After years on the sidelines, Kathryn started doing family history and discovered that she loved it. Her specialty is helping new family historians find success and maybe even avoid some of the mistakes she's made. Kathryn teaches Sunday classes at the BYU Family History Library. She also presents at Riverton's Saturday seminars and other family history events. Her column on family history ran in the Nauvoo Times for about a year and is still available online. Kathryn works for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as a technical writer and instructional designer focusing on usability and process improvement. Besides family history, she loves uplifting music, thought-provoking books, and spring lilacs. So we'll turn the presentation over to Kathryn.
Okay, everybody, welcome so much to today's webinar. We're so happy to have you join us. This is another one in the series on getting the most from FamilySearch Family Tree, and we're going to take a deep dive into tree views in Family Tree today. I wanted to make a little comment at the beginning of the webinar with some advice that I hope will be comforting or reassuring. We're going to be covering a lot of detail today. And so I wanted to say, don't worry about remembering it all because you might just stress yourself out. Just think, oh my gosh, I'll never get this. But you'll become familiar with the features at least, and I'm confident that things will come back to your remembrance as you need them. And then also, of course, as Marin mentioned, we record these webinars, and so you can review the presentation later. So my advice would be to sit back, relax, and enjoy our ride today. We're so glad to have you with us. So what are tree views? Very simply, they are the views in Family Tree that show multiple generations, and there are 4 of them. We've got landscape view, portrait view, fan chart, and descendancy view. The thing is that all of them do show the same information, just in a different format. So how do you get to the tree views? There's a couple of different ways. If you're like me and like to use URLs, you can go straight to familysearch.org/tree. But also there are a couple of buttons you can use. If you click Family Tree, you can go straight to Tree Views. And of course, this is the one where if you hover over it, you get a menu, but it also has a click function. And so if you click straight on Family Tree, you will be taken straight to Tree View. And then also, if this second menu is visible for you, and it depends on where you are in Family Tree, but at times when this menu is visible, then clicking Tree will also take you to Tree Views. So how do you get to the different types of tree views? Well, there's a menu in the upper left-hand corner, and by default, it says landscape. But the nice thing is about Family Tree is it will remember your preferred view. So if you change to another view, then every time you get into tree views, it's going to remember that view. So on this menu, we've got the 4 different choices that we talked about, and you just, of course, like a typical drop down, you click the one you want and it changes to that view. So now let's go ahead and go through each of the 4 views. We're going to start with landscape, which is kind of the traditional view, traditional multi-generational view. And we'll go into quite a bit of detail about landscape view, and then we'll touch on the other 3, and we'll kind of point out the things that are the same and the things that are different. So when you first get into landscape view, you're going to see something very similar to this. And in order to understand tree views, it's really helpful to understand the concept of a root person. So every tree view is going to have this root, or maybe you'd call it the main person or the point of reference. It's basically what your tree is focused on, and everything else, all the other people on the tree, are displayed in relationship to that root person. So for example, on the landscape view, you've got the root person's ancestors on the right of them, and then you've got the root person's descendants on the left. 4 generations are shown initially in the landscape view. So you can see the first generation, I've just numbered them arbitrarily. That's not anything that's used by FamilySearch, but just going left to right, we've got the kids in the first column or first row generation. We've got the root folks in the second, we've got the root people's parents in the third, and then the root people's grandparents in the fourth. If you want to view more generations, you'll see arrows on the right and on the left. If you click the arrows on the right, that will allow you to view more ancestors. And if you click the arrows on the left, you're able to view more descendants. So when you click that arrow, it's going to expand to 2 more generations. Those generations, as you can see in this example, might not be completely populated. So for example, you can see that Philip Terrell and his wife Sarah, neither of them have parents in Family Tree, but you've got the option to add them here if you have that information. Now, if you wanted to see another branch, you notice there's another arrow down here. If we click that, we actually get taken to the branch for that family, but that first branch that we had open closes automatically. So for some reason, you can only see one branch, one extended branch at a time in Family Tree. And I'm hoping that that changes in the future. For any of you who have used virtual pedigree on the BYU Family History Lab site, you know that it can display multiple branches. So I'm not sure the reasoning behind this, but they're always making improvements to FamilySearch. So possibly we could expect that to change in the future. But for now, you can only open up one extended branch at a time. If there's no arrow, that just means the branch can't be expanded. You can kind of tell that already, right? Because there's no husband and no wife here, and so no way to expand it. But once you added people there, then an arrow would appear here and you'd be able to expand that branch. If you see a down arrow by a spouse, it indicates that there are other spouses. So Thomas Besceby Terrell married twice. His first wife, Elizabeth, died, and then he married another woman. So if I click the down arrow here, I'm going to see a list of all the spouses that are attached to Thomas Besceby Terrell. And then, of course, to close that list up again, you just click the arrow again. And if you want to see one of the spouses, so for instance here, I'm seeing Elizabeth Doman as the spouse in the root couple. But if I wanted to see Jenny instead, I would just click on her, and then she would be shown in the box with Thomas as his wife. You can also see an arrow that shows the ability to expand a list of children. And so if you click that, here's an example. We see all the children of Thomas Besceby Terrell and Elizabeth Doman. And then to close that up, of course, you just click the arrow again. Clicking anybody's name any place on any of the pedigree views, or tree views actually, will display the summary card. Most of you are probably familiar with the fact that that's the case just about any place on Family Tree. Almost every place you can click somebody's name and you see this neat little summary card that gives you a summary of their information. Well, there's something cool about the way summary card cards work in landscape view. If you click tree, it will, on any summary card, it will automatically move that person to the root position. So that's a quick shortcut for getting somebody into the root position. Let's go over a couple of the controls now that are available on the tree views. You can make the tree larger or smaller by clicking the plus or the minus. It's kind of like map applications. If you've used those, you know, Google Maps and so forth, you can zoom in and zoom out. Then also you can drag the tree to reposition it. So if you're, for instance, a time when this would come in handy is if you have expanded some generations and then you want the tree to be positioned differently on the page, you just put your mouse pointer any place on the gray area and click and drag. Again, very much like Google Maps or other map software. Let's go over these last three icons also that might not be immediately obvious as to their purpose. So if you click home, it puts the current user in the root position. So if I'm signed in as myself and I click home, then it's going to put me in the root position. But the thing is, if I was already in the root position, then it's not going to change anything. So the time when this is useful is if you have maybe opened up other generations or navigated someplace and you want to get back to yourself. So you just click home and it's going to put you right here in the root position. The other thing I wanted to comment about that is if you have signed in to help somebody else, it's going to put them in the root position rather than you. The next icon is an icon to center the tree. And again, that's useful if you've kind of dragged the tree around because you've been closing and opening generations. And it's just going to pop your root couple back to the root position in the basically the center of the tree. And again, if they're already in the center of the tree, clicking that icon has no effect. And I think that's why it puzzles people sometimes. So the time it's effective is when you've moved the tree and you want to get the root people back to their original position. Then finally, you've got this relatively new feature, which is really nice. It's full screen mode. What that does is it's going to hide those top menus. So on this particular view, when I click that icon, I got taken to a screen like this. And you notice those top menus have disappeared and it gives me a lot more room for my tree view. There, you'll notice that there's just a button up here now. And so if you want to show those menus again, you just click the menu button and they will reappear. You might have been wondering what these icons are that you see. That's a question I actually get a lot when I'm helping people, new people especially. Well, they are for different hints or so forth that you can look at and take action on to improve the quality of your tree. There are 4 different types, so let's look at each one of those. First of all, there are research suggestions, and those are basically just suggestions that are done algorithmically by Family Tree. So in other words, they're automatic. What Family Tree will do is look at the relationships and the dates and so forth on the page and then or on that person's information, and then it will make suggestions. For instance, if a couple is shown as if there is a couple, it actually doesn't matter if they have a marriage date or not, but if there's 2 people that have a couple relationship but there's no children, it will give you a hint saying, hey, this couple might have children. Or if they only have a few children, it might say, hey, they might have more kids. Or if there's a big gap between children, it might say, hey, there's a gap of 4 or more years, you may be missing children. So those research suggestions are really helpful to just give you some guidance on what you might be able to do to improve the accuracy of your people. You'll also see these blue icons, which are record hints, and these are really cool. What they do is Family Tree looks at the information that's already in Family Tree about your people, Then it searches through Family Search historical records and finds records that may apply to that person. So really, Family Tree is doing the heavy lifting for you. It's just wonderful. You can look at those record hints and say, oh yeah, that looks like the census for my family. All the information matches, and then it gives you the option to attach that as a source. Now, these aren't foolproof, of course, because Family Search can only use the information that's on the person page or that's connected with that person. So if any of that information is inaccurate, then you have a chance of getting inaccurate hints. So you always want to sanity check the information in those hints before you attach a source and just kind of see, do they make sense? Do the family members match? Do the dates line up? That kind of thing. But this is sure easier than going out and digging up the sources yourself to have a list of sources you can just look at and see if they're for your people. Data problems, these are incredibly helpful. Family Search flags what I would call the low-hanging fruit. Basically, they're logical impossibilities. For instance, they will show you duplicate records. They will show you mothers having children when they're 2, something that we know is not going to happen. They can show you fathers fathering children 5 years after they died, also not a possibility. So those data problems, you can pretty much click on those, get in there, see what the issue is, and then do more research to resolve them. I love those data problems just because they help you clean up the tree. And then finally, if you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you may see temple ordinance information if you've elected to show that. And there's a way to turn that off actually, but if you've elected to show that, then you'll see temple icons of various colors. One of the questions that I get most frequently is what the different colors mean. There's 2 ways to find that out. You can either go into your temple reservation list, and in the upper right-hand corner, there's a link that says legend. And if you click that, it will drop down a list of what all the colors mean. And that same legend is also available on the ordinance tab of the person page. So here's an example of what happened when I clicked a link next to this, or excuse me, an icon, one of these blue icons for Joseph Bowker. When I did that, I got a list of 3 record hints for him. And if I click on those hints, that enables me to see more information and decide if I want to attach that record hint as a source to Joseph. Only 3 hints are shown at a time, I suspect because of space constraints. But you notice here there are actually 5 hints for him. So if I click Show All, I'll get taken to the page that you might be familiar with on the person page that actually lists all the record hints and data errors and so forth. It's just a nice convenient list of everything that pertains to that person as far as record hints and data errors and so forth. So you've also got the helpful option to decide what you want to display and what you don't. So for example, suppose that you only wanted to see record hints. Well, then you'd click this options drop-down menu up here, and it would drop down a list of all the items that you can turn on or off. So you can see here, I've chosen to show record hints, research suggestions, and data problems, but I didn't want the portraits on for this particular one, but I do show the marriages. But you can click or unclick any of those, and it can be really useful if you're feeling like it's too cluttered or you just want to focus on a certain thing. There's actually another little thing here I wanted to comment on, which is not part of the icons, but it's invert colors. On that, you notice how this screen is showing white and kind of light gray people on a grayish background. Invert colors for landscape view will show you black people or black boxes on a darker gray background. So it's just kind of a nice switch. If you like switching things up, you can click invert colors and it will make a change for you. Okay, that's it for landscape view. Let's go ahead and look at portrait view. So this is the default view, and basically portrait view is just landscape rotated 90 degrees. So it's kind of flipped on its side. The root person and spouse are still in the center, but The ancestors of the root person and spouse are shown above them instead of to the right, and the children are shown below them instead of to the left. If you want to view more generations, you've got the same arrows, but again, their position has moved slightly. If you want to view more ancestors, the arrows are going to be above the ancestors. If you want to view more descendants, the arrows are going to be below the children, and they operate exactly the same as the arrows that we looked at in landscape view. They'll just open up a couple more generations if they're available. On portrait view, the way the multiple spouses works is slightly different. The arrow is off to the side of the person, and if you click it, you get the same list. But for whatever reason, it's only available on the root person. So looking up at these other people, just because they don't have an arrow, doesn't mean that they don't have additional spouses. In order to see that arrow in portrait view, you'd have to move them into the root position. So here's a quick review of the things that are the same as landscape view. You can click the name to view the summary card. You can click plus or minus to resize the tree. You can drag in the gray area to reposition. And you've got that options drop down in the upper right hand corner that allows you to show and hide the icons. Okay, let's go to my favorite view, which is the fan chart. I've tried to decide why I love this view so much, and I guess there's a number of reasons that we'll kind of talk about as we go through, but I have to admit, this is my absolute favorite view. One reason is just I like the colors. So the default view of the fan chart is to display a color-coded view of your ancestors and children. And I love that it's in a compact space. You can see more people in less space with this view than you can with any of the other views. The root person is in the center again. That's pretty standard, but slightly different view again because it is a different chart. The spouse and the children of the root person are shown immediately below them, and the ancestors of the root person are fanned out above them, hence the name. The fan chart has a nifty way to move people to root position, which isn't available in any of the other tree views. And that is that if you just hover over anybody on the fan chart, you get this little darkish bar with a fan chart icon on it. And when you click that, it's going to put that person into the root position of the fan. That can be particularly helpful if you're trying to see further generations back. For instance, if your family goes back maybe, I don't know, 15 generations and you're only seeing up to 7 generations in the fan chart, you can put someone on the outer edge in the root position, and that will enable you to see those additional generations. So speaking of generations, we've now got the ability, this is a relatively new feature and I love it. We've now got the ability on the fan chart to show up to 7 generations. And that's also when that plus and minus resize, when those resize icons come in handy, because the more generations you show, the more likely it is you'll need to kind of make the tree a little smaller to make it all fit on your screen unless you've got a really huge monitor. And here's the other thing I love, love, love about the fan chart. This is also a relatively new feature, and that is that you can show different things on the fan chart depending on what you're most interested in. The family lines are the default view, so they're color coded by family or by individual, I guess you could say. Notice here that the blues all go off on the father's line. The greens go off on the father's mother's line, and so forth. But all these others are incredibly useful for different tasks that you may want to be doing as you do your family history research. I want to look at, just give you an example of the one that is probably the one I use the most, that I find the most useful for finding additional people, and that is birth country. So when you click on birth country, the colors change. Instead of seeing them colored by lines in the family, you see them colored by the birth country. And you've got a nifty little legend over here that shows you what the colors represent. But wait, there's more. If you click a legend item, then it will highlight that item in the fan chart, making it easier to see. So in this example, I wanted to see all the people in the UK, who were born in the UK. So I just click that, and you see it gets an outline around it, and it makes it very easy for me to see that birth country that I want to focus on. The things that are the same as landscape view, click a name to view the summary card, show spouses and children, but it is for the root person only. You can click plus or minus to resize the tree, and you can drag in the gray area to reposition. Now let's talk about descendancy view. This is a view that is specifically oriented only towards descendants of a person. So here's the default view, and the root person on descendancy view is actually shown at the top. And so we've got here Bennett Burroughs Quibell is my root person, and this actually tends to be one of the trickiest views for people to read in my experience. So I wanted to go through and kind of point out how this works so that hopefully it will be a little bit easier for you as you try to make sense of it if you use this view. So right beneath Bennett Burroughs Quibell is his wife, Susan Bescovy. So the root person's spouse is shown just below, but that spouse is slightly indented. That tends to be one of the reasons it's confusing, because the spouse is indented, but then the children are also indented. So as we look down, we see that Bennett and Susan's first child was Sarah Bescovy Quibell. Their second child is Anne. But I have opened up Anne's descendants on this view. So now the next thing we're seeing is not Anne's next sibling, but rather her spouse. So there we've got her spouse, and then next to that, we've got the children of Anne and Noah. You can close and open branches depending on what you want to focus on. So the down arrow means that a branch is already expanded. So if it's a down arrow, for instance, this was the down arrow on Anne, and it expanded to show her immediate family. If I click that down arrow again, it's going to close that branch. A right arrow means the branch is collapsed. So if I click it, it's going to expand. So basically it's a toggle. Like the fan chart, you can select the number of generations that you want to view, but there's only 4, and as opposed to 7 on the fan chart. But one thing to be aware of is that it will only show descendant generations. So even if you click 4, it's not going to show anything above the root person of Bennett Burroughs Quibell. It's just going to show additional descendant generations going down. Now this I wanted to particularly comment on, the expand button, because it's definitely not what it sounds like. So what expand does is actually allow you to choose a new root person. It doesn't really expand the tree. So let's take a look at how that works. When I clicked expand on Bennett Burroughs Quibell, this is the screen that I got. Bennett is in the root position, but it shows 2 generations of ancestors that I can select to replace him in the root position. So for this example, let's say that I want John Quibell to be my new root person. So I click the select button right under him, and then when I get back to this view, John is shown as the new root person. But notice that the tree did not expand. So I was originally seeing 2 generations, and again, I'm still seeing 2 generations. And if I wanted to expand Bennett, like I had him expanded before, I'm going to have to click his arrow here to display more generations below him. So I just wanted to comment on that, that expand, it's not really what this does. It just allows you to select a new root person. The things that are the same as landscape view is that you can click a name to view a summary card, and you can show or hide icons using that options menu in the upper right-hand corner. So this actually brings us to the end of our webinar. I'm not going to walk through this table, thank goodness, right? That would be tedious, but I wanted to include it in the webinar just as a resource. And so this will be available to you on the recording, or if you'd like a PDF of it, please email me and I'd be very happy to send you a PDF. But it basically just compares the different features, the main features of the different tree views. So thank you for coming to our webinar today. There's my email on the screen if you would like a PDF of that table that we just looked at. And Marin, do we have any questions?
It doesn't look like we have, we do have one. And if anyone else has questions, they can go ahead and use the chat box. Linda asked, can the screen be printed when you get rid of the borders of the family tree?
When you get rid of the borders, I'm not sure what you mean by that, Linda. Could you clarify? It's probably really obvious, but I'm not getting it. Sorry.
Linda clarified the full view of the family tree.
So do you mean the borders of the browser? I'm guessing. My understanding, I haven't printed for a long time, and Linda's clarify if I'm not understanding you right, but when you print it, I do believe that the borders of the browser are not going to show up. And let me clarify actually what I mean by print. Let me go back up. This is something I actually did I probably should add it to a future webinar. But if you click options up here, the views that can be printed will have a print option. Descendancy, interestingly enough, cannot be printed. In fact, maybe we can go to our handy dandy table, and it looks like all the others have the option to print on that menu, except Descendancy does not. If you use your browser's print function, I am not sure how that would work, except I do believe that it will not show the borders of the browser. So Linda, if that doesn't answer your question, please post back.
She commented, when we have printed in the past, it was so small and we could not enlarge it to be able to see it very well.
Oh,
Do
that
you
would be,
have any tips on printing not the view chart, any of the views from the family tree?
you know, Linda, did you use the print function of Family Tree or the browser? If you used Family Trees, I would probably try, well, actually in both cases, I'd probably try clicking the plus to make the tree bigger and see if that helps. And if it doesn't, I am actually not sure. If anybody on the webinar knows the answer to that, could you post in? And otherwise, I would probably recommend contacting support. Great question.
Um, Daryl commented, you can simultaneously click Control and Print Screen, and then the view, and then pan out so you can see the whole view. There is also some other tools for printing on the BYU Family History Technology Labs website. I don't know if you've used that before, but they do have some more print-friendly options. I think we have a couple webinars on that. Linda said, I think we used the browser. We did not see the print function at that time. And you also can come in here to the library. We do have like a large printer that prints the big fan charts. And we have someone that can show you how to get that big fan chart.
Oh, and those are awesome. My dad actually did that. And Marin, is there a charge for that? I can't remember.
I believe the charge is just for printing costs of the
Yes.
paper.
It seemed like it was really minimal, but my dad was so happy with the fan chart that he got printed there. It was amazing. So,
You also can go to a different copy shop, and there are some of those big like at different family history centers in church libraries. They do have an option to print those. I'm sure if you ask your family history consultant in your area, they'll know a place to print those, or if any of the nearby family history centers have that printing format.
Sounds awesome.
All right, I think that's all the questions we have for today. I'll just move over to the closing slide. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. We do have another webinar coming up, and that'll be on Wednesday, and not Thursday. That will be with Joe Price on the 17th at 3 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. He'll be giving a presentation on family name networks. And then following that, on Thursday, we'll have a presentation on the Ultimate Digital Preservation Guide with James Tanner. So that'll be the 18th at 3 p.m. On Thursday. If you have any comments or questions, you're welcome to email at fhl_webinars@byu.edu or visit our website, which is fh.lib.byu.edu. This recording of today's video will be posted on our Facebook and our Twitter, as well as on our YouTube channel and our website. If you have any other video needs, you can email me or check out our webinar index of our previous recordings, which is on our website. I think that's everything. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next time.